Sex workers of Reddit. Have any of you ever have a close friend or anyone you normally interact with daily be a surprise customer? What was the experience like, and how did it affect your interactions with them? Last semester I ran a massage service, and I had this one client I particularly liked because he was so friendly, positive, and just smart as F. I never asked my clients for their last names or too much about what they did for work, and the only thing I really knew about this guy was that he was in a STEM field. Well, fast forward to one existential crisis and a college major change later, and this semester I have to take chemistry. Lo and behold, that really smart client is now my professor. Neither of us is currently acknowledging it, but I can tell that we still feel that bit of connection we did when he would come see me for massages. When I was a cam girl, I would have many guys message me saying they were my cousin or something. They were not, just trying to play out a fetish and I wasn't into it. So then one day a guy, in the main chat, said that he knew me and his name was AJ, fake name. I was like, yeah right, I've only ever known one AJ, if it's true what's my name? And sure enough he put my real first name right there in the chat. We were in youth group in church together almost a decade before that. He became a regular. That happened with me and my estranged older half brother once when I was camming. I messaged him on Facebook to confirm and we had a good laugh about it. Cousin 1, female, is a stripper. Cousin 2, male, lives in another state, and hasn't seen myself or cousin 1 since we were kids. Cousin 2 comes to visit. Cousin 1 invites cousin 2 to her place of work one night. He knows it's a strip club, but expects cousin 1 to just be bartending or waitressing or something. Anyway, cousin 2 rocks up to the club and cousin 1 has her tits out. Cousin 2 said he turned around and walked right out of there. WTF cousin 1, why? I'm a stripper. My friend's dad came in. I hadn't seen him or my friend since high school. I accidentally asked him for a lap dance before I could tell who it was. He said no and I realized who it was as I walked away. He came in a few more times and avoided eye contact with me. When I was on stage he would look away. Another story, my first day as a stripper I saw two guys from my high school. We chatted, then they both paid for lap dances. This exact thing happened at my bachelor party. It was funny. My friend's dad had coached the stripper while on his daughter's soccer team. They had a pleasant chat and she went on to other patrons. It's so good to hear how mature and professional some can be under these circumstances. You just have to brush/laugh some stuff off. She's got a job to do and he's there on leisure time. It doesn't have to clash awkwardly. I was a stripper back in the day. Halfway through a stage show realized that my flatmate's brother and his friends were there. That's how I was outed. Nothing much changed. My much younger brother was getting married, had a bachelor party at a strip club with a dozen or so high school friends. After about an hour there, a rather ordinary looking stripper comes on stage, takes off her top and our tables of guys goes wild, standing and applauding and hollering. I have no idea what is going on. The stripper looks through the stage lights, her eyes get really big, she grabs her top and runs off stage to the back. Bouncers come running over to our table, thinking we're starting trouble. Nope, it turns out all of the guys in his high school class had a history class with her a few years back. She later came out and talked with us, said she never thought she'd see someone, let alone 12, she knew. It was in the next town over. I was not a sex worker at all, but I was a fine art model for a college for a while. There were so many people that I went to high school with that entered those classes over the 2 years I worked there. Usually they wouldn't say anything, and I wouldn't say anything, and I would just get naked and pose for 3 hours. Sometimes we would chat after, but sometimes we would ignore each other and pretend it didn't happen. In college one of my girlfriend's sweet mates used to model nude for the art classes. Fast forward about 8 years, I went to a bachelor party for a friend, and we all went to a strip club. One stripper came out wearing the naughty schoolgirl outfit, and I recognized her as my girlfriend's sweet mate. As I was turning to tell my friend, the groom, that I knew her, he turned to me and said he knew her. Turns out that when he managed a restaurant, she was one of his servers. His brother thought this was hilarious and paid her to do a lap dance for my friend. She had a great figure, but my friend never took his eyes off hers, to where she would see him looking at her body. Even when she turned her back to him, he looked at the back of her head because he felt so uncomfortable. Worth every penny. Not for the groom, but for the rest of the broths who were probably howling with laughter at how uncomfortable he was. I had a classmate who was a stripper, and she was very open about loving it when people she knew came to see her at work and let her dance for them. She thought it was intimate in a fun, friendly way. I was talking to a stripper. She said she had grown up in a suburb about an hour away and used to strip there. She said that ultimately there were too many guys from her high school who came in. I thought the point of being a stripper was that nobody came in. We surprised a friend from university that was working at a strip club to pay for her studies. She just noticed us, winked at us and did her show as usual. Zero fucks, of any kind, were given by anyone. Not a worker though. Funny story. One night my best mate was in town, lived in another state, used to live here. We went out clubbing and eventually decided to go to the strippers. Pay our money, and as we enter my friend notices a stripper laying on her back, spread eagle for a guy. Highly drunk he yells out, "Hell yeah, how good is this?" The stripper hears and notices my friend, sits up and yells, "What are you doing in here?" My friend instantly went and sat in the corner proper embarrassed. Turns out it was his cousin. Not a sex worker, but delivered a pizza to a known sex worker, and at the same moment I was about to knock on the door, a relative opens the door and watches me holding the pizza up to him. I couldn't do anything but laugh. He laughed too, maybe out of embarrassment, and as soon as the sex worker understood what was going on, she also started laughing. Never mentioned this moment to anyone who knows my relative, and he is grateful for that to this day. I worked in a brothel in my hometown. Before the brothel, I worked at a pharmacy owned by a man I got along especially well with. We had a very close friendship and mutual feelings for one another, except he was married and so we addressed the feelings but never acted on them. He always said he wished he had a time machine so he could go back in time and be with me, and that whoever I dated would be the luckiest man in the world, etc. One day at the brothel some dude booked me and I accepted the booking. When I got in the room I noticed he was my old boss' son I had met a few times when he had come to see his dad. He became sorta besotted by me. He found me on Facebook and would ask me when I was working or if he could come over. It was weird because he knew I had feelings for his dad and really didn't care. One day he was pestering me, so one of my co-workers suggested I say to him I will agree to have a booking with him if he brings in a pair of his father's dirty underwear. He was freaked out but actually considered it. I told him I was joking and wouldn't be seeing him again. I felt guilty and weird, it was too close to home. One of my friends still works for his dad, and he can be difficult to work for. She always says once she quits she will say, "I quit, and cat cube fucked your son." Guys from school and stuff would come in but generally I would avoid them or just decline if I knew they were choosing me because they knew me. It's just easier not to mix things. Clients don't seem to understand that it's completely transactional, and that I'm not interested in talking to them for free. Attending a bachelor party a long time ago. The stripper came in, said hello, and went to the bathroom to fix herself up. She peeked out the door and called one of them over. Turns out, she went to high school with us, a couple of years younger. She called a friend to replace her and she left. Was an RA in college and had a pair of residents on my wing who were both cam girls. Found out from rumors that were eventually confirmed when I had to help both of them get back up to their room after calling the paramedics because they were passed out drunk outside our residence hall. Came into their room and saw the camera set up, dildos, and lingerie sets and pieces, just laying out in the open. I also found out that night that they had a pet kitten in the room, another rumor I heard about them that ended up being true, but also heard they abused it pretty bad, poor thing. Anyways, as we made it up to their wing, one of the girls came to just as we entered their room and tried to play with the pet kitten. She rolled off the bed from her side, stumbled across the room and just a few steps, and ended up falling face first into the makeshift litter box they had set up for their cat. Cat shit and cat litter flung everywhere. Our campus PD was so confused when they showed up to find sex toys and cat litter everywhere. Their dorm room nearly looked like a crime scene. What a time college was. What a time. Sex workers and going to accidentally go up to their relative's hotel room like in the movies. About 10 years after I graduated college, my fraternity had a reunion during homecoming. One of my fraternity brothers was walking around with a very pretty woman in tow, introducing her to everyone as his fiancé. This guy was not a ladies' man in any way. In fact, he was the kind of guy who had no luck at all with women despite his family's wealth. So I thought, good for him. The kid couldn't get a date, and now look at him. But then I started looking closer at the woman. She kind of bore a resemblance to this stripper I remembered from a few years ago. The druggy one who used to give handies in the champagne room. But I dismissed it. Couldn't be her. Later at the party, she pulled me into an empty room, looked at me pleadingly and said, "Please don't tell him." There was a girl I went to high school with who was basically a walking stereotype. She fit so well into the archetypal ditzy blonde mold that you might swear it was an act if you didn't know better. She was also fucking mean. This girl was a power bitch and wasn't really nice to anybody, as far as I'm able to remember. People orbited her because she was hot and had everything. She never really bothered me because I did my best to be invisible, but the handful of interactions I ever had with her left me feeling unpleasant. Turns out she wound up being a pretty lucrative stripper later in life. I bought a lap dance from her, and while being nice is part of the job, it really did feel like in those brief few minutes that she did have a genuine personality shift. She was way more laid back, you could even hear it in her voice. She even commented about how she wasn't a bitch like I used to be, and I have nicer tits. It was a genuinely fun interaction. She seemed happier in comparison to the person I remembered. Used to be a sex worker, ended up in an appointment with my best friend's dad. Didn't figure it out until I was telling my friend about the very awkward guy and her face went pale. I put two and two together pretty quickly and changed the subject. When I was young and dealing with a drug addiction, I sold myself to get money to sustain this. One day I had 3 customers. They messaged me and we met up where they planned. One picked me up with his car, one at his apartment, and the last one also picked me up by car. I take a look at him, and it was my friend's father. He was single, and didn't know I was the hostess. It was a bizarre night. I haven't told my friend and things are just as normal. We haven't had another meeting after that. I did some stripping back in the day. All was well until my high school stalker from another state showed up in the club. I was drunk and he was in a business suit, so I gave him a chance and he came back to my place. Nothing ever happened, we just went to sleep, but it was the worst thing I could have done. He wouldn't leave the next day. When I managed to get rid of him, he wouldn't stop texting and calling me. I told him I didn't want anything to do with him, and he just wouldn't leave me alone. He believed we were brought together for a reason. It took moving 5 Facebook accounts and a few number changes later until he finally got the hint. I was in the process of booking with a sex worker, and she sent me a few face pics that she didn't post in her ad. That's when I realized she was actually my cousin. I politely told her that I couldn't meet, and never said anything to anyone, including her. My best friend's girlfriend used to be a stripper. After she met my friend, she quit stripping and started working as a bartender at a pub. I was a manager at a luxury hotel and we had a guest who would stay with us every other weekend and get a hooker, sometimes male prostitutes too. We obviously knew about him and, like all of our guests, maintained his privacy. One night smoke detector went off in his room. New Zealand has strict laws against indoor smoking. Normally I'd get one of the duty managers to attend to such situations, and I only get involved when they refuse to pay the $200 fine. Anyway, that fateful night the duty manager was busy handling another situation, so I go upstairs. Since I was a manager I had the authority to blacklist any guest, and this hit this guest's 3rd time smoking in room. I knock on the door and I hear a frantic "Hold on a sec." The door opens and he is just wearing his undies, and I notice in the reflection of the mirror inside the room, a naked chick going under the covers. I asked him about him smoking in the room. He very calmly and arrogantly told me that it was impossible for the smoke detector to go off, as he had covered it with a condom. Now, that is a literal crime, tampering with the smoke detectors. I told him that I will have to take a look at the smoke detector to see what he has done. And will have to report it to the fire department, so that they can come and make sure it's still functional. He let me in. I saw the condom covered smoke detector, and asked the guest to pack his bags as I would be transferring him to another hotel. I was being very assertive. Then I looked over at the lady and my jaw dropped. It was my best friend's girlfriend. She was an escort without the knowledge of my best friend. After I had transferred the guest to another hotel and fire department already at the scene, I received the hooker's call, asking me not to tell her girlfriend. I told her that's between them, and that she needs to come clean as her girlfriend truly loves her, and I love my best friend. She's been hurt and heartbroken many times. Lesbian drama. That night I got home and my friend was acting strange. Forgot to mention that my best friend and I were roommates too. I asked her what's up, and she asked if it was true that I came onto her girlfriend. I had the most intense WTF moment. I told her everything. She was in tears. I didn't know if she would believe me or her. So she called her over to talk to her. Before her girlfriend got to our place, my friend came to me and asked me if I was 100% sure that was her in the hotel room. I was absolutely positive. Then I gave her a hug and told her that I am sorry that she had to go through that, and whatever she would decide to do next, I understand and that she would have my support, even if that meant either of us moving out. I was in my room pretty upset myself when the doorbell rang. My friend came into my room and asked me to accompany her to the door to greet her girlfriend. When we opened the door, my friend just asked me to make sure that bitch couldn't enter the house. She then grabbed her stuff and threw it out on the stairs, some of which hit the cheating bitch's face. She then told her to never ever contact her or come near her. After all that was said and done between them, after the storm had passed, I made my friend her favorite cocktail, went to her room, climbed into her bed and asked her why did she not even give her girlfriend a chance to explain herself. My friend's response: it hurts to know that she lied to me. That she cheated on me. With a man. But I could have forgiven her for all that. But I can never forgive her for accusing you of something like that. You are not just my best friend. You are my bro. You are my less bro. We slept in her bed watching Grey's Anatomy that night. I truly miss her. But yeah, her ex is now a full-on prostitute working at a brothel and has cancer in her neck. I don't really qualify as a sex worker. I'm a guy who F's women on camera for porn producers, so I'm not paid and I don't have customers. But one time I showed up to a shoot for a blow bang and ran into the guy who owned and operated the CrossFit place I went to. We acknowledged the connection on the set and performed our roles but basically never spoke of it again and resumed our normal trainer/customer dynamic after that. He was married at the time but I think they were open. Not that it was any business of mine. If you're doing sex work, you're a sex worker. If he's not getting paid, isn't he more of a sex hobbyist? Sex and paid in turn. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.